Enduro Method is an online strength and conditioning program built for those who ride by those who ride. We are professional coaches dedicated to building the best and most revolutionary off and on the bike training for dirt bikers around. Enduro Method offers a monthly subscription which gives you access to our ongoing current training program. By subscribing to Enduro Method, you receive our Iron Track, which is for those who have a gym or gym equipment, and our Gravity Track for those with minimal to no equipment. We design our training for riders who want to keep their general physical preparedness in top form year-round. We also offer more specific training plans that you can purchase anytime. We have built an 8-week hard enduro training plan designed to get you ready to race with structured off and on the bike workouts, all in a comprehensive 8-week plan. If you are interested in joining the monthly Enduro Method training subscription, we are offering a special discount for our podcast listeners. Use discount code EMPodcast23 in all caps for 50% off your first month of training. See the show notes where you can find discount codes and a link for more information and to sign up for Enduro Method. And now, on to the show. Welcome to the Enduro Method podcast. Josh Dayton here. And today we're going to talk about 3 strategies to increase your performance on the bike.
Hello.
So we got 3 things here. This is not by any stretch an exhaustive list, but 3 things that I think using as a way to organize your training, or if you don't do any specific training, 3 ways to kind of think about going about some training to increase performance could be very useful. I will also want to say that this is only pertaining to riding. So obviously I think being fit, strong, and healthy is super important as well, but that's not on the list because that's not on the bike. So for this discussion, this is just riding specific.
Things that you can do on the bike specifically to...
Well, sorry. Yeah, I guess categorize that better. It's not actual things to do on the bike. It's ways to organize going about doing things on the bike.
Right.
So it's not like go practice your slow wheelie by putting pressure on the right peg, make sure you're covering the brake. Not like that. It's more like, as we'll get into, ways of separating your riding into different categories to then practice each one of those things.
Okay.
So first one is on the bike conditioning. Pretty vague term, but I think this is the biggest, I wouldn't even call it a secret, but maybe the difference between amateur riders and professional riders probably is this right here. So if you're looking to make that leap or want to improve your amateur standing or whatever it may be, this is probably the single best thing you can do to start getting faster if you're racing, or even you don't even have to be racing, I guess, but if you just want to be a better rider, breaking down and doing timed interval work on the bike, which I'm broadly terming on the bike conditioning. That could be anywhere from literally 1-minute repeat intervals or 20-minute intervals, or maybe it's a 60-minute mock moto. Like, the variations are pretty endless, but doing these things in a somewhat controlled environment on terrain that you want to improve that can make a massive difference in your riding ability.
Yeah. So you're just basically saying not going out riding, but riding with intent.
Yeah, riding with a timer. Because one of the biggest things about this, and this would go for, it carries over to every sport. Like, you have to do things that are measurable and repeatable to get better at them. So if it's not measurable or repeatable, you really don't know at what intensity you're working at. And so I'm not saying that there's anything wrong by any stretch by going out and riding and having fun. But when you're looking at that as like a focused effort to make improvements, you don't really know. There's like too many variables in there. And you could be going really fast in one section and then really slow in another section. And then over the course of 2 hours or however long you're on the bike, it's like, oh, great. I had an awesome trail ride and it was super fun. And that's great. And you can totally leave it at that and you don't have to mess with that at all. But if you do want to make improvements and you do want to get faster, then you'd be better off taking a section of that ride or whatever that is within the purview of kind of what you want to improve on. So for instance, if you're a hare and hound racer and you're really bad at sand whoop sections or sandy loose corners and then it whoops, one of the best ways to train for that would be go find the whoop section, warm up, of course, start a clock, run that section, time it, say it takes you 5.5 minutes to get through. Great. Go back to the start and do that 5 times. And your goal with that is to be within, 5 or 10 seconds of however long it took you on the first one for however many rounds you do. And that would be a very solid little training session. And you could say, if your first one was 5.5 minutes and you finished let's say you did 5 and your last one was 8 minutes and you didn't crash or anything, there wasn't any outstanding, you just literally got that slow over the course of those 4 or 5 rounds, then there's a bunch of different things going on there. It could be a riding skill level, could be a fatigue level. Maybe it's a combination of those things. But what you want to do is be able to have repeatable efforts on that. So one way would be you do that same little short course, but you go out a little bit slower on your first go through, knowing that the fatigue is going to build over the course of however many intervals you're looking to complete. So you drop the intensity a little bit and then try and push that out longer, right? So now maybe you're at 6.5 minutes, but you're able to do all 5 of those the same pace. That's fantastic. And then from there, you can, again, do the same thing over and over. It might get a little monotonous at times, but that's how you know that you're actually making big improvements, is when you can have something to go back to and check your repeatability out and all that stuff. So if you're able to go back to that thing, let's say you did that once a week for a month, and then on that last session, when you're out there doing that same interval, that same section, you do the first one, you do it in 5 minutes, but then you're able to do each next interval of 5 minutes as well. And you do 5 of those intervals at 5 minutes at every time. That's a massive improvement in speed and endurance and stamina and everything else. But you would literally have no idea how to measure that if you weren't able to do kind of the same area, the same course every time. And this isn't specific to desert racers, hard enduro. I mean, this is literally every discipline of riding out there. You're just changing intensity, playing with time durations, and terrain. So the shorter the event, you could take something like enduro cross, right? Maybe roughly anywhere from 8 to 12 minutes or something in there. You're just going to be doing a lot of shorter sessions or interval work, but you might be doing a lot more intervals because they're so short. But you're always just playing with work to rest ratios. And what I mean is, if you're working for 5 minutes, you're resting for 5 minutes, that's 1-to-1 work to rest. That's a pretty big chunk of rest. And the reason why you would rest that long is because when your intensity is super high, like you're going really, really hard, you need that system to fully recover. Right? So if you're going super hard for 5 minutes and your goal is to work at that really high intensity, you need to rest enough amount of time to be able to push that intensity again. Just as an example, let's say you were doing 5 minutes really hard effort, but only resting 1 minute, and then trying to do another 5 minute really hard effort. And you wanted to do that a couple times. What you'd find is that very quickly your intensity dropped every single 5 minute interval, because you're not getting enough rest in between. So again, it's not that that's bad. You just need to be aware that you're working a different system. Right now you're starting, power output's dropping, intensity's dropping. You're building up way more fatigue than you can manage. You're getting subsequently slower and slower and slower. So again, it's not that that's necessarily a bad thing in general, but you're also just not training that intensity that you started out at. So you're better off paying attention to these things and setting yourself up to acquire as much time and the intensity that you wish to train. So if you want to go out really hard, really fast, you're going to need to break those up and rest a little bit longer. If you're looking at wanting to build more endurance and stamina and like more of a longer race pace, something like that, or an all day trail pace, then doing 2-minute super fast intervals might not be your best bet. Maybe you want to do 20-minute intervals on your bike where you're going out pretty hard or moderately hard for 20 minutes, you're resting for 10. So that'd be a 2-to-1 work to rest ratio. And you're, accumulating 60 minutes in that zone, something like that. So there's really no wrong answer here. Just
doing it.
Just doing it and literally just going out and start playing with it. Like you can be your own little coach, creator, whatever you want to call it.
Or they could hire us.
Yeah. But
You.
I think part of it's just getting out and doing it. Like the secret is in the work. That's it. But this is probably, I think, again, the biggest differentiator to me between, actually all three of these things are, but this one in particular is like the difference to me between professionals and amateurs. This is how professionals ride. Amateurs go out and trail ride a lot.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you haven't already gotten a pen and paper and wrote all that down, then now would be a good time as we get into number 2.
So that would be on the bike conditioning. Again, that could be a big spectrum. That's just one kind of really quick example of how to go about doing that. The options are endless. Like again, a little creativity, like just by mixing up terrain, you're going to get a totally different stimulus on that. You could do the same intervals for the rest of your life and just change terrain and feel like you're doing different things. So it's actually pretty cool. And it's, again, great way to see improvements in yourself because riding is such a dynamic thing. There's so many moving parts that it's kind of hard. Like usually your friends are a better judge of how much better you are or worse you are than you are. But sometimes it takes a long time for them to see these things too. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. So having this own little feedback loop for yourself can be a great confidence booster.
Yeah. Okay. Number 2.
I categorize this as kind of skills and drills. So this would be breaking down techniques and practicing them individually without presence of fatigue, more or less. Like you're going to have a little bit of fatigue. Obviously, you're out there using your body.
That could go to the ability of the rider too.
100%. But for the most part, when you're practicing new drills or skills on a dirt bike and you're trying to learn them and they're difficult and you got a lot of shit going on between like hand coordination, foot coordination, balance, where you're weighting the pegs, blah, blah, blah. You want to do that in the absence of fatigue for the most part. That's where you're going to get the most out of it. One other note on that is, and the reason why I kind of separated it is because it's very important to not get caught up in trying to give yourself a workout when you're trying to practice these new things. Like it's a completely different mindset. So there was I don't remember the study. I don't have a link for it, whatever, but it was a really cool one. And they were relating it to basketball, but it was this idea, like if you stayed after basketball practice and you shot, 300 3-pointers, right? It's obviously better than not shooting at all. But there was a much better way to approach it than just going out and shooting 300 threes in a row without stopping. Again, more or less without stopping. A better way to do it would be to go out, maybe shoot 5, and then you take a 30-second walk, and you come back and you shoot 5 more, and you take a 30-second walk. And so the idea is being that instead of just like the old thought was that when you slept, I think it was in REM sleep, right? That's where you get your biggest downloads, like all the things you've learned in the day, right? Yeah. When you get your REM sleep, another important reason to get really good sleep. But that's where you like, your body starts to process all this new stuff that you learned for the day. Well, that's true, but it also happens immediately after doing the skill at almost the same rate, if not even faster. So by just loading practice on practice on practice without letting yourself have a little space in between, you're not allowing your brain and your body to basically do what it's built to do, which is learn new stuff. And so by doing a skill, giving yourself a little bit of time to let your brain, I think it replayed it like 20 times the speed. And then you come back to it and you practice again. I hate the word hacking, but you're kind of hacking like your learning ability, which is kind of cool. So if you're trying to practice skills and drills and thinking of it like on the bike conditioning, you're going to be short circuiting the whole learning process, because all you're going to be doing is pushing more and more practice on top of fatigue, which is then going to make your practice worse and not give your body any space to learn it and trying to implement it immediately. Of course, it's still better than doing nothing, but it's not as good as it could be. So by doing this thing, maybe you're doing double blip practice. Do 3 double blips real quick, back to back to back, and then go right around for 15, 20 seconds. Like it doesn't have to be super long. But while you're doing that, it's also important that you're not on your phone. You're not
distracted.
Yeah, you're not really chatting with friends. You're not taking selfies or whatever the hell you're doing out there. And so you're sitting there, you're almost like in the zone. You're letting your body do its thing. I'm not saying you're not thinking about process and all that. That's fine, but you're very focused.
You're thinking about what's for dinner.
Exactly. You're kind of out there. You're paying attention. Focus on the task at hand. So anyways, it's kind of a cool thing. I've been doing that personally a lot on the trials bike because that's all I can still ride. This stupid snow. And hard to say, but I feel like it actually freaking works. Like I'll do it on sections. I'll do it on specific techniques, and it's pretty crazy. Like I will fail, and then take a minute, fail, maybe get close, fail, take another minute. And within a 15-minute period, like it's not pretty, but I'll have accomplished what I was trying to do. And it's not repeatable yet for me or like just built in and easy money, but it's pretty phenomenal. Like it's significant enough that you're like, holy shit, I think that actually works.
What about all the rest of us that do a few fails and then say, I don't got it?
It's not enough fails. Like it's so many. And then it's not only that, but it's day in and day out of like, things take freaking time. So consistent practice, but you're setting yourself up with that strategy of, again, keeping your skills and drills minus fatigue for the most part. And when I say that, like I consider hill climbing. I consider like hill climbing a skill. So if it's a 20 or 30-second hill climb, you're going to have fatigue at the top. So some of that, I'm saying like, take that with a grain of salt, but you're not banging out 30 hill climbs back to back to back to where you can't breathe anymore. You do one, you come down, you take a minute or two, do another one. You know what I mean? So the focus is on the quality of the effort, and it's not just bleeding into this heavy breathing, like
grunt work kind of thing. Okay. Sorry, go on.
I kind of lost my train of thought, but I was more thinking like, the caveat that who this would be for. And then ultimately, like, like I'm thinking of myself. So compared to you, Josh has put a lot more time in this past year of his writing than yours truly here. And then I was like, what do I have? I have no excuse. Like we both have multi full-time jobs. We don't have kids. I don't know if that, plays a role in your time, but I mean, I have no excuse, but like, like I want to get better. I know the tools how. It's just whether or not you're going to put the work in.
Yeah. And I mean, you kind of said like, who's it for? I think
it's somebody who wants to get better.
It's for anybody that wants to get better. You don't have to race. You don't have to care about racing. You don't even have to care about beating your friends or being like, none of that matters. It's literally, if you want to be a better rider, a safer rider, which is, I think, one of the massive things that's overlooked.
Well, I mean, it just goes back to like the fundamentals that, we teach at Dirt Tastic. It's like, that all that is essential to, practicing that is going to make you a better rider than nothing at all.
Well, yes. And on to the safety thing, like it's one of the more overlooked aspects of it, because we've all, I think, it's not that we're past anything, but we're to a point for the most part where when we leave the truck, I'm not worried about not being able to make it back to the truck because we can't get out of what we got ourselves into, barring like bike breaks down or an injury. But 3 or 4 years ago, that wasn't the case. If I didn't know the trail, I didn't know the area, and I heard there was like,
I feel like this made one of us that feels this way.
Well, right. But that was
unless you're like willing to ride my bike.
That was a major concern for me. So I get really nervous going to new areas when we're doing a loop that's 80 miles and we literally have 85 miles of fuel. And then there's an unknown section that's supposed to be,
super gnar.
Yeah, something, right? And now I don't worry about the terrain at all. It's definitely, there's an injury risk. There's a bike malfunction or braking or something like that. But as far as the riding part,
for the most part, there's cliffs though, Josh.
For sure. There's things that could happen. You could get hit by a freaking deer or get chased down by a grizzly bear. Did you see that video?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. So anyways, other things can happen, but safety is a major, major player and should be a major consideration for people who are getting out on the trail, going out to ride and have fun. It's not just for yourself, it's for the group you're with as well. So dedicating time to practice it's almost the equivalent to me of like going out and hunting, but never shooting your rifle or taking the time to become a better archer. Like you're putting the animal at risk, you're putting the group you're with at risk, and it's not very responsible.
If only we could go back to our 10-year ago film.
So that's
as Dane whiskey throttled into every tree.
Yeah,
and, totally. Somehow walked away with a lot of things.
Well, we learned a lot.
So
but
now we're talking about experience.
Yeah, a lot of that, could have been short-circuited by taking a lesson. There's amazing folks out there giving riding lessons. There's made videos on YouTube. Go watch them. Obviously, Rich Larson puts them out. Puts out some great ones. There's a bunch of trials videos from Pat Smodzy and everybody else out there that you can use and just adopt it and do it on the big bike. Like you don't have to have a trials bike. In fact, I'd say there's an argument to do trials like riding on your big bike regularly, whether it be cone drills or like little, it's so incredible what you can make on flat ground challenging and really like put in quality work in your driveway, in the yard. There's really no excuses for not doing it.
I like it. All right, on to number 3.
Last one would be volume accumulation. So
I think I'm really good at this one.
it's a pretty broad bucket.
Seat time.
Yeah, seat time.
I crush this one.
This for me is like everything that we just talked about and spending time. Yep, spending time in each one of those areas. And then of course, like trail rides for me fall into this, but it was important for me to categorize it so I could still enjoy it. I'm a weirdo a little bit on stuff like this. When I get focused, I can tend to be pretty single-minded. And unless I feel like something's moving the needle for me, I don't enjoy it. So I actually enjoy the things that I think are making me better. And then the things that I feel aren't actually improving my riding, I tend to not enjoy anymore. So it was important for me to find a way because I do still enjoy just going out and riding, but I needed to categorize it. I needed to have a bucket to put that in. So to me, that's one way of thinking about trail riding with friends, going out with a group of too many people and taking too many breaks and talking too much, is to put that in volume accumulation. So it's kind of like zone 2 work. It's refreshing. Like if you're an introvert, you get alone time, right? Like riding with friends pops off your social bucket. I don't know.
I'm going to make the argument that it is totally okay to hang out in category number 3.
I never said it wasn't. I'm just saying that's why I had to think of it as a category.
I definitely spend down just going off a tangent, but
that's where we've spent most of our time.
Yeah. But I also think that that's helped us, well, along with our whole foundation of Enduro Method of fitness has allowed us to get to where we are today through category number 3. And then, of course, there's some category number 2. I don't think we've spent a whole lot I have not spent a whole lot of time timing myself in intervals. That would be definitely a new one for me. I think if I was really getting into the racing, I would definitely want to make sure to do that. But, and then maybe this summer I'll experiment with doing that. Because I think, like you said, it's super beneficial. And I know that it's just harder to motivate to do that than the other 2 categories.
Yeah.
For me personally, which if you're listening and you're identifying with me right now, that's okay.
I think I don't want to make light of the fact that it's hard to find maybe places to do that too. Like depends where you live for sure. Depends what you have available to ride. Finding suitable little loops or sections to repeat can be challenging.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're fortunate enough to have areas to be able to do that, that's amazing. If you don't, I would say try and seek it out if you can, but that can definitely be a limiting factor in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, those would be the 3. Again, on the volume accumulation, that would be a volume accumulation in your number 1. So your conditioning on the bike. It would be volume accumulation in number 2, which would be your skills and drills. And then volume accumulation on just being on bike. So zone 2, whatever, doesn't have to be classified as zone 2, just riding your dirt bike, period. But if you're serious about making improvements on that, you need to spend the majority of that time in strategies 1 and 2.
I'm looking at you like, what about 3? And 3.
Some in 3, but
3 is where you apply it.
Three would be somebody who doesn't take racing as a career. So
Yeah.
I care about racing. It is not my career. Maybe at some point. No, I'm just kidding. But like, I would not consider myself a professional racer in that sense by any stretch. Like, to me, if you're a professional, not, you could take the classification of the word professional or whatever, but I want to race at a high level. I'm not there yet, but I also want to enjoy riding as an outlet and a way to,
With me.
yeah, with you, with friends, with our community here, like all around the world when we travel, all those things. So I'm going to do a mix of everything and not just always constantly train. I also enjoy the training aspect, so I'll continue to obviously do that. And I got goals and stuff that I want to get to. But thinking of it in these three strategies or categories or whatever you want to call it has been helpful. And then from there, you can take that down and even break down your daily sessions into categories, because even if you're
Daily sessions?
let's say you're out on your bike for an hour, it should be a mix of a couple of those things. It shouldn't necessarily, you should be able to go do some interval work and you should practice some skills and drills together. And then that's also for the day of accumulation and volume pertaining to those two things. And you might skew that 50% toward intervals, 25% for skills and drills, and then 25% free play or whatever you want to call it. And that's going to keep training relatively fresh. It's going to keep the monotony down a little bit. Just as a quick aside, this winter, I was able to get a Quonset hut, an old potato cellar Quonset hut, and turn it into a trials area, which has been freaking amazing. But it's a pretty small area. And so I've not bike run time, but, and again, I'm only saying this just as kind of a reference. I spent a lot of time in there. I have like 130 hours on my trials bike this winter. And that's not run time on the bike. I just keep it through my Garmin. So I have an idea of the hours I've had over there, but it's averaging like 5 to 7 hours a week on the trials bike in a 100 by 100 foot, let's just say, I don't know what it is exactly. So it's probably 60 by 100 foot area. So believe me when I say there are days that I was in there that the last thing I wanted to do was be on the trials bike. Like, I didn't see any improvement. Whenever I was practicing, I couldn't stick, couldn't get it. It's very frustrating. But what would happen is I would just get creative in the sections that were in there or the obstacles, and I'd create a new one that was fun and different and challenging. And then all of a sudden it was fun again. And I would try and stick with that section till I could clean it forwards and backwards a couple times. And then I would make a new one. And then as soon as that, if it so happened before I was able to clean it, this and that, I would leave it, come back to it, but be constantly switching it up in that realm of like right where you're on that edge of too difficult and you're playing with that it's a great learning zone, right? If it's way over your head, it's too difficult, you're not going to learn it. And if it's too easy, you're not going to learn it. It's kind of the same as like lifting weights to actually get stronger. You got to lift heavy enough that it's hard, but not so hard you can't do it, and not so easy it's freaking light. Same idea with learning skills and getting better on a bike. So, and then at the end, I would always try and find something to literally play on that, like maybe I saw on Instagram or some other rider do that I'm like, that would be super cool to do. And maybe that particular skill is way out of my league, But I'd be like, what could I practice to get to that in the future? Like, what if I want a real well hop? Okay. Don't even know how to start on that. Can I do a slow wheelie standing up in first gear on a trials bike consistently? Not yet. Okay. So let's practice that. So I'd find like something like that and then end the session having fun and doing something maybe completely unrelated to what I was working on earlier. So anyways, just as I don't know, maybe it helps give some
inspiration.
Well,
hopefully by now you're feeling a little inspired to get out there and get your practice on. Up your moto game. All right. Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Should we plug anything?
Yeah.
I feel like in our 8-week hard enduro training plan, there is on the bike intervals.
Yeah.
On the bike stuff. So you might as well, if you are racing a hard enduro event this year, we do have our 8-week hard enduro training plan that has bike intervals and in conjunction with spending time in the gym and other stuff. So
yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be a hard enduro. It could be a hare scramble. It could be a hare and hound or a cedar race or desert race. It doesn't
8 weeks
matter.
out. 8 weeks out.
You would use all the same intervals and just modify your way you're riding the terrain.
So check that out. We also offer one-on-one coaching too. So yeah, hit us up if you have any questions. Like this podcast, if there's anything specific you ever want to hear us talk about, or more so hear Josh talk about, or me, you can slide into our DMs and hit us up. EnduroMethod.com. Thanks for listening to another podcast episode.
Thanks.
We'll catch you next time. Cheerio.